So what does it benefit me, I guess, to bring or ask questions or bring other people to the table? It's information. It's knowledge. I think knowledge is key to moving forward as a person, moving forward as a society. And with a lack of knowledge and understanding, you're not going to grow. You're not going to transcend where you currently are. And I if you want to get biblical, I think that's you look at that in Romans, the renewal of your mind. I think that it speaks a lot on that. I think people think that's some other thing, not like societal, or I think it's exactly that.
Welcome to the Global Fringe podcast, hosted by April Diaz. This is a show featuring leading voices from the fringe, mostly women and people of color, who are on the journey to live and lead with wholeness. This season will guide you on your own journey towards wholeness in body, mind, and spirit, in full partnership with men. It's time.
We're back! It's the beginning of season 3. I'm so excited to be back with you all for a whole new round. And as we're kicking off this season, I'm going to take you behind the mic a little bit with my brother from another mother, producer, founder of Truthwork Media, Michael Yoder. Welcome to the show.
Man, it's incredible to be on, April. This is a dream come true for me.
Oh my gosh. You need to come up with some bigger dreams, Yoder.
Well, this is fun. I can see you, you can see me. We're recording on a new platform, and so this is great.
We're like up in the game this year. We've got a new platform to record. We've got a new microphone. Yeah. You're on the podcast. I mean, what more could we all ask for?
The fans were asking for it, so we got to give them what they want.
Give what the people want. Maybe this is a dream come true because you are the very first white guy we have had on the Global Fringe.
Man, you didn't tell me that, I don't think. And I should know that because I've edited all your shows.
Yeah.
Man,
for very intentional reasons, the Global Fringe has been pretty much an exclusive platform, exclusive podcast for women and people of color. And so, I don't know. I think your privilege is just through the roof today coming on this show.
Here we go.
Here we go. Okay, so I want to tell people just a little bit about you. And I'm giving you such a hard time, which is great. Don't fire me. So you and I became friends kind of accidentally about 4 years ago. I was living in exile in northern Indiana, where you still currently live.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this exile.
You actually live in the same town as presidential hopeful Pete Buttigieg.
That is correct.
And you are pretty stoked about what's happening in your city.
Yeah, big fan. Hopefully we can talk about him and just, I think, what he stands for a little bit on the show. That'd be amazing.
Yeah,
I think it actually ties in.
It does tie in a little bit later, I think, to where we're headed. But do you remember the very first time we met?
Oh, no, gosh. I don't.
Man. You invited me out for coffee at Starbucks.
That couldn't have been the first time we met.
Oh, really?
I think you were already on our podcast a couple times.
Oh, that's
having the podcast, and then I invited you because are you talking about the time where I was worried because I was going to turn 30 and I had no idea what the hell I'm going to do with my life?
Yes. And you're like, "Hey, old lady, tell me what I need to know."
Oh man, and it was true. Like I was like, "You are so much older than me. You have so much more wisdom than me. Help me out a little bit here.
Help me not die when I turn 30. And you also were asking all kinds of questions about like deconstructing evangelicalism and how to pursue some dreams that you had while you were working a job you weren't so sure you wanted to work anymore. So look at how far we've come. So we stayed friends. I moved to California again. And I've actually been in California now longer than I lived in northern Indiana. And we have stayed friends. We've stayed connected, which has been great and beautiful. And then about a year and a half ago, I had a pretty significant, what I like to call a pattern interruption, which I talked with my friend Brooklyn Lindsay about in season 2. Go back and listen to that episode. It was great. But I got fired from a job that was basically our family's only stable income in that season. And it was a job that mattered to me. It was some work that was significant with friends. And that firing was really painful. Felt like it was not only a like a sock in the gut, but it kind of tore the bottom out of some relationships and some work things for me. And I was feeling, just real sucker punched, real surprised, real devastated. And somehow I called you up, or I don't even know how this part of the story happened either. It's like all of our crucial moments together are a bit of a blur. But we reconnected and you said, Diaz, it's time. You need to start a podcast. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? So why'd you push me to do it?
Wow, that wasn't on the pre-list of questions you sent me, April.
I know. I'm here for surprises.
Why did I ask you to do it? Well, one, I believe, without being pitchy, because it's what I do for a living, I honestly believe in elevating stories and people's stories. And I believed in your story. I believed in what you stood for as a person, and I believed in your platform. And I was like, you need to get this out there, regardless of your situation in life, regardless of where you were. I was like, you need to do this. This is no better time than now.
Yeah. Yeah. And since I had a lot of time, I was like,
true. Right. That is true.
Let's figure this out. So I think it was within 3 weeks, I had a podcast, and it was called The Global Fringe, and you designed the first artwork. And
which I'm not a graphic designer by
but I was like,
means.
This looks amazing, because I didn't know how to use Canva or anything at that point. But I was like, let's do this, because one of the things that I believe very deeply is that your whole story matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I even thought, like, in the midst of like this confusion, darkness, grief, anger around the loss of this job, like that there was something that needed to pull me forward. So launching this podcast was one of those things that I feel like helped pull me through some really hard stuff. And so the Global Fringe would not exist if it were not for you, and for you specifically being an ally for me in that period. And so
I would ask you, you're welcome. I would ask you, what have you grown from, or what have you learned from having a podcast?
I have always loved stories. I don't think I'm a natural storyteller. I think much more in bullet points and in like burning things down kind of mentality. We'll talk about the Enneagram this season too, which will make more sense for some of you who don't know me yet. But I think that like it's been a really great process for me to learn how to ask better questions of people to get at the heart of the story. And I think Bonhoeffer said it well, that God's word to us is almost always for the other. And so the people that I've had on this podcast these last 2 seasons, there's been 29 episodes. A few have been just me. So maybe let's say 25 guests in the last year and a half. Their stories and what God has given to them has been most certainly not just for them. It's been for you, for listeners. So I'm really honored, and I feel like it's been a great privilege to host people and ask great questions that allow for the story that's been in them to have greater impact.
Yeah, isn't it cool to see relationships form and stories be told? There's something transformational, I think, that happens with podcasting. I don't know if it's just the platform. It might be just having conversation with people in general. That is constructive conversation. I think maybe the key to that, but it just happens a lot in podcast world. So
yeah, I love the tagline of your company, Truthwork Media. It's everyone has a story. Yours needs a podcast.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
I don't think I necessarily agree with that. I don't know that everybody's story needs a
podcast. I got to be careful with that, because I'm with you. Like everyone's story needs a podcast. I don't.
Everyone's story deserves to be heard and valued and honored. I don't know that everyone needs a podcast. But
it's an interesting thing, right? Because I don't believe personally that everyone's story. I got to be careful here. Not everyone's opinion holds equal amount of weight. That's just reality. Sure. And so everyone's story doesn't have equal amount of weight as well. Mm-hmm. And so it's an interesting time where we're living that equal weight is given to everyone, where I don't know that it should be or needs to be, or maybe it should be. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually a good kind of transition, because for season 3, we're pivoting on this podcast a little bit. And, between season 1 and season 2, there was a pivot and kind of a sharpening and a focus given. But even more so this season, we're gonna shift this podcast a little bit to be more aligned specifically with this company that I just launched earlier this year. Did you know I launched a company?
I did know you launched a company.
I hope so.
There was one day though I messaged you. I said, "What is this?" And you're like, "Yoder, that's my company." I'm like, "Oh, I should have known that."
Yeah, and you were legitimately like already following me and like subscribing to something, and you were like, "What is this thing?" And I was like, "It's my new company, Azer and Co."
I was in the Facebook group.
Thanks for paying attention. So Azer and Co is 6 months old. She's still a baby. I still liken her to a preemie. She was birthed rather prematurely and abruptly, but on purpose at the same time. And we're still figuring out all kinds of things within Azer and Co. But there's a few things that I know that are going to be reflected in the podcast this season. We are all about connections. We're all about coaching, and we're all about courses, particularly for women, to guide women towards wholeness in life and leadership. But to do that in partnership with men. So wholeness and partnership are like two like glaring, like light flashing kinds of things for us, because I think that is the pathway towards transformation, particularly for women and people of color that have experienced marginalization and oppression and voices being silenced, et cetera. And so every episode this season, we are going to focus on what does it look like for us to have wholeness in our body, mind, and spirit, in all of our life, in all of our leadership. And then also, what does this partnership piece look like? How do we grow in relationship with men? What does that look like in friendship, in leadership, in work? And how do we kind of expand the allyship that women have with men? Because one of the things that I've said a lot these last 6 months, and again, kind of accidentally just came out, but I believe that the response to patriarchy is not matriarchy or even feminism, it's partnership. That is what we've been designed for. So that's where we're going this season.
I love that. I freaking love that.
Have you never heard me say that either?
No, I've never heard you say that. I'm sure you posted it on Facebook. I'm sure you have. I just love that. I really do. Side note, like I got rid of Facebook. I got rid of Instagram. I'm no longer on any of that stuff.
I told Yoder a couple weeks ago, like, you're the worst millennial ever. Like, you don't engage in any of these spaces. You're on Twitter, but I hate Twitter.
I love Twitter. So I was sitting around a bonfire last night, and my friend said, "You're the first in, first out with all this stuff." I just can't stand social media. Just can't. It's garbage. It's garbage.
Then you're doing it wrong, because I love it so much. Okay, so I want to have a conversation with you around these ideas of partnership and wholeness for a minute, so that you can help us kick this season off.
I love it.
Let's start with partnership, because you're a man.
I am.
I'm a woman. Particularly, you're a white man, and I'm a white woman. And so you are kind of at the peak of privilege in our culture and in America 2019. And one of the things that I love about you is that you are very committed and engaged in learning what that means and how do you use your privilege for the sake of others that don't carry the same inherent privilege. And so, I appreciate your learning and your journey in this, because I think if all men carried your posture and your practices around this stuff, our world would be way better. So I think the first thing I want to ask you as a white, cisgender, male, Christian from the heart of America, what does it benefit you to engage in partnership with women?
It's a great question. I want to go back a little bit, and you make me sound a lot better than I actually am. So I just need to caveat that. All those nice things you said, yes, I try to live into those things. But man, I do not look at myself as anywhere close to the poster child of what it looks like to partner with women. I just have a long way to go in that. Also, one of my favorite comedians, Bill Burr, he says this whole movement has been. He's a if you guys don't know Bill Burr, you should check him out. Love him.
Is
But he
he just
said
got a Netflix special?
he does. It's called Paper Tiger.
Yes, I think
It's
I just saw it, and even the like the little preview of it kind of pissed me off, so I wasn't sure I wanted to watch it.
it's gonna piss you off.
Okay, great.
But that's why you should watch it. I think we're actually afraid to be upset as a culture. Anyways, but he says white women are in the same hot tub as white men. They're enjoying it just as much as we are, just a little bit different.
Mhm.
So while I am a white male, you're also a white woman. And so it's like there are levels to these things. That's one of the things that I'm learning, that my privilege looks different than yours and your privilege looks different than someone else's. And it's just kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
muddling my way through this entire thing and just trying to learn and ask questions.
Yeah.
What was your actual question? I forget, because that was a long.
How do you, at kind of like the peak of privilege, how do you benefit in partnership? You've got all the power. You've got all the privilege. So in some ways, like on a natural level, like you don't benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about this last night. Like, why, on a selfish level, I have no need to want to see Trump out of office. We'll use something practical, because I am benefiting from almost every single thing he's doing. Middle class, white dude, middle America. Like, things are going super well for me right now.
Straight.
Why would I want that? Why would I want that to end? And so I think that's, for me, that's a perspective that I have to continue to realize when I think about people that are like me, that support our president, that don't understand a lot of these things. They're not bad people. In fact, I just read an article, I was telling you about this, that was written about my hometown in 2016 about white evangelicals that support Trump. And while it's not a great article about people from my hometown, you can still get the sense that these people are meaning well and they're loving people, and they're not all bigots. They're not all bad people. And I really do wish that was something as a society there was more space for people at the table of all different backgrounds. So what does it benefit me, I guess, to bring or ask questions or bring other people to the table? It's information. It's knowledge. I think knowledge is key to moving forward as a person, moving forward as a society. And with a lack of knowledge and understanding, you're not going to grow. You're not going to transcend where you currently are. And if you want to get biblical, I mean, I think that's, you look at that in Romans, the renewal of your mind. I think it speaks a lot on that. I think people think that's some other thing, not like societal, or I think it's exactly that. As we progress as a society, we have to be renewing our mind of what is culturally acceptable and what is not. I mean, shit, you look 100 years ago, slavery was still around, and that was culturally acceptable. It took the renewing of our mind to realize this is not what God had intended. This is not what the kingdom, heaven coming to earth, that's not what that looks like. And so for me, wanting to partner with women, I'm not a pastor anymore. I don't pastor. So I don't want to sound pastory, but to me, it's ushering in the kingdom of heaven onto earth more than it already is.
I love it. It's good. Practically, what does it look like for you to be proactively partnering with women?
And I can talk a lot. So if at any point I'm talking too much, you can just cut me off and interact, because I want this to be a conversation. I was thinking about this last night. I don't want this to be a typical podcast question interview, because I know you have opinions, and anyone that knows, neither one of us are short for opinions. So I don't want to be the only one talking today. But what does it look like? It's asking questions. So whether that be on things that I don't understand. So reproductive rights, we'll use an example. And I just keep going back to politics because it's an easy, tangible thing to talk about.
Well, politics is our shared life together. That's what the word politic actually means in the original Latin form, is that it's our shared life together. And so everything is political if we're actually going to be living our life together with one another. So I
love it. So it looks like me having a message thread with you and two other females that I respect a lot, their opinions, and saying, hey, I don't know if I'm on board with XYZ, or could you help me better understand what it means when you guys are talking about your reproductive rights?
Mm-hmm.
And just asking a question, and one, not getting defensive, I think is big, because when it's just natural. So like the brain is only capable of like changing 1% at a time maximum.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to do a giant shift, we're literally unable to do that as humans in a quick amount of time. It's just scientifically impossible. So to do a shift from like 15-degree shift in your theology or perspective,
Right.
it takes a long time. But I think the thing I've learned that's helped me is to figure out how to not be defensive when my views or my understanding of what the world is kind of comes under attack.
Mm.
And being okay and realizing that something being under attack is not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not as frail as I think we seem to be.
Yeah, we're super resilient. And really, I think change often takes place for us when we experience cognitive dissonance. When we go, that's not how I think about things, or that's not been my experience. Tell me more. I think you do that really well, and you've done that countless times with me over the last couple of years. Is like, I don't understand this. Tell me more. Or this has not been my experience. Tell me your experience. And I think that that's a really helpful, proactive way for us to stay in partnership with one another. When you're more committed to like digging your heels in and just saying like, no, this is what I believe, and this is what I've always believed, or this is what I've always thought, or this has been my experience. So therefore, I that doesn't leave any room for transformation. So transformation, if transformation is the goal and the key, which I think it is, that's a posture that you've got to take. And I think you've done that really well.
Well, thanks. And I like what you said, that transformation is the key. I would say that agreeing is not necessarily the goal. And you didn't say that. And I think that's an important distinction, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that you and I don't agree on. And when I come to you, it's not always the nicest. I'm like, hey, this seems to be BS. Like, this is some BS here. Help me with this, because I cannot get on board here. And so it's not always like, we're not always like super nice and sitting down and having a cup of tea, you know? And but I feel like our conversations are fruitful because, and I think this is big, I think we trust each other. Yeah. We trust, I trust your heart, you trust mine. And I think we've lost a lot of that in society today, that we've trusted the inherent goodness of people, that they mean well, regardless if they come across as assholes or not. And I think both sides of every religious political party can do a good service for themselves if we start entrusting that we are all inherently good and that we're doing the best we have with what we can.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper, because I think one of the ways that you have also partnered well, like with me specifically, you know, is like you had a platform, you had a company, and you looked at me and you were like, I think that this is a space you need to enter more into, and I'm going to make a way for that to happen. And I think that for a lot of women and people of color, and then particularly women of color, the resources or the access is not as available, or we've got to work a lot harder for. And so, I mean, I think you did that for me with this, but I'm wondering, like, even as a business owner, as someone who's got a company that they're running, like, what have been ways that you have seen others, or you specifically have been proactive to pursue partnership with women?
So with getting a business off the ground, as you were doing, you had your baby analogies of birthing a company. We're still in like toddler phase, right? So
you're about a year ahead of us, right?
Yeah. Well, I just finished my third summer. So we're entering year 3, which is nuts. Is that a toddler? Is a toddler 3 years old? Yeah. Heck yeah. Nailed it. So at first it was literally, I'm I'm going to take just about anyone that wants to do business with me because I got to have business. But now I think it's now that we're doing better, we're doing well, we're established a little bit more. I can be a little more selective on who I pursue. I can be selective on who it is I bring on staff, and I have work with me. So what have I done? I think it's been targeting and going after different companies and organizations that I want to be a part of, and I know what they're actively doing to dethrone the patriarchy.
Yeah.
if I can say that.
Totally.
I'm not going to drop names because I don't know that that's beneficial. But it's different companies. So I came from evangelical land, which is neither good nor bad. It's just my background. But that's where a lot of my connections are. And so it's choosing the partner with people that I know want to elevate women, want to elevate voices that are people of color, just all sorts, LGBTQ voice. I want to work and partner with people that have a giant table, not a small table. And so that's kind of my focus, and where I would like to say we don't partner with anyone that doesn't do that. That's just probably not the reality. But my focus and our company's focus is doing that. And it's really giving voices. I just spoke at a keynote last week, and I said, I want to give you guys, it was a keynote for parents with kids of disability. And so there were charter centers that all came together, and we're learning about podcasting. And it's literally giving voice to the voiceless is what I want to be a part of. And that's what I want our company to be a part of. And so it's, how do I partner with women? How do historically marginalized people, how do we give them a voice to be amplified? And that's what I want to do. And that's what we set out to do by hiring different people for contract work, for focusing on different companies to work with. That's kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. So people are going to get an inside look into how you and I fight or converse. I would say everyone has a voice. No one is voiceless. Even those who cannot physically speak, everyone has a voice.
Yeah, it's
an
analogy, April.
But you said giving voice to the voiceless, and I think that that's one of the things that is important when you have power and privilege, is to acknowledge that we all have a voice. Like it's part of some of the work that we're doing at Azer & Co. There's a piece in one of our courses around of owning your voice and of amplifying your voice. That is the work that's to be done. Our voices have been silenced, or our voices have been marginalized, or our voices have been like told to shut up. But it's not that anyone is voiceless.
Correct. So yes, I 100% agree. So if someone's voice is silenced, would you say that their voice is silent? So they don't have a voice necessarily?
No. Okay, so maybe
I get what you're saying.
Maybe we're mincing words a little bit.
Yeah.
I just part of the like inner power that I want people to know that they have is that they have a voice. It's just like there's been some tape that's put across their mouth, or they've been told that they're not allowed to speak or whatever.
For sure. I 100% agree. And so what I think TruthWork Media does is we walk alongside of people that are helping those people that have been silenced for a long time elevate their voices. Yeah. And sometimes we get to elevate the voices of those that have directly been silenced. So it's both. It's elevating people that have been silenced, and then helping others elevate people that have been silenced.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think it's really good.
And I 100% agree with what you're saying.
So one of the things I'll probably find myself saying multiple times in this season is that, particularly for men, like, because you've got power, you have an opportunity, and your privilege is to use your privilege to like both lay down your power, but also to use that power to elevate those who don't have the same opportunity and space. And so I think that, how you do that as a business is so important and really beautiful. So carry on.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to talking about wholeness for a minute.
Ooh.
And I I'm sure there's a great definition of wholeness out there. If anyone has one, send it to me. But I think that wholeness is just becoming the fullest version of yourself in body, mind, and spirit. It's holistic. It's integrated. It is all consuming of your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. And to not pay attention or to address any of those areas is there's then a lack of pursuit of wholeness. So for you personally, why does wholeness matter?
I would say I think wholeness is important for so many reasons. One, it gives me something to strive for and know that I will probably never obtain.
Yeah.
But just making it's so
Like a
Matthew
mission.
McConaughey. Yeah, Matthew McConaughey had this acceptance speech that was phenomenal. But he said this is dedicated to himself 10 years down the road, and that's the person that he's always chasing, always chasing, always chasing. And he was talking like Matthew McConaughey does.
All right.
But it all right. And it's kind of that thing, like wholeness is this. I would say it depends on who you talk to. Some people think it's obtainable here, some people don't, but it's something to strive for and work towards. And if you're not, I think, at least for me, I can see it pretty quickly when things start to slide, whether that be with health, whether that be spiritual, because everything is spiritual. Everything, I mean, very Rob Bell-esque, but I believe it.
Yeah.
Everything is spiritual. So everything ties back into wholeness. How you talk to people, the food you're putting into your body, who you're hanging out with, the things you're consuming. And I hate to even sound legalistic, but what are you putting into your brain?
Yeah.
Whether that be from news, whether that be from things you're reading, content online, all of that stuff begins. I think wholeness is important because it shapes who we are.
Yeah.
And if we're not actively monitoring who that is and what we're putting in, we're going to wake up in 10 years and we're going to be someone completely that we don't want to be, or we don't know who we are. And that sounds like slippery slope bullshit that I was taught growing up. But I honestly believe some of that to be true, right? There is an urgency to take care of ourselves that I think we need to have.
Yeah.
Because if we're not actively pursuing something greater than ourselves, we'll just be a narcissistic asshole.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we talk a lot about in coaching is what you focus on expands. And so if you're focusing on wholeness, there will be an expansion of wholeness in your life.
Oh, that's good.
If you are focusing on a bottom line, then that's probably going to expand for you. If you're just focusing on I've got a lot that I hope comes out this season around like abundance and scarcity in the ways that we think about the world and ourselves. And that is like, there's a lot of focus on scarcity right now. And then it's expanding the ways that we interact with each other, the way that we don't care for our mental health, the ways that we engage entities like the church or our policies in our country, et cetera. So yeah, I think
and it's hard, right? Because so for people that are listening to this that identify as like ex-evangelical or people that have walked away from the church, how do you take care of yourself spiritually? I think that's a really good question and something that you should be asking, something that I have to ask myself.
So what do you do? What are the practices that you're engaged in spiritually that are leading you towards wholeness as somebody that's been in a deconstruction process?
Yeah, I would say communion with the Fellowship of the Communion of Saints. I'm just kidding.
Very Apostles' Creed.
But on a serious note, it is the communion of like-minded people that are going through this process. Because one, I think it's very dangerous to do anything alone.
Yeah.
Very, very dangerous to deconstruct alone.
Yep.
The second is looking and consuming content that helps transform me. Whether I would say Richard Rohr has been monumental for me, learning how to try to meditate, even though that's still very difficult for someone like me.
Yeah.
Learning to sit in silence. I've done breathing techniques, and I want to be very, very clear. I am awful at all of these things and don't practice these near enough. But it's these things that are centering And for me, I'm go, 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 go all the time. Want to be around people. For me, it's learning how to sit in silence and be still. And that's where I find a lot of peace and tranquility and a lot of Jesus there. And so taking care of me spiritually is going to be different than taking care of you spiritually.
Yep.
And I think that's also important to realize that I wasn't taught that necessarily growing up. And that's not a knock on my upbringing. That's not a knock on my parents or my youth pastors or any spiritual directors. But I was taught, you want to be close to God, you got to read the Bible and pray. Well, that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's figuring out what does work for you individually and tapping into people that know really, really well how to go about these things. So I'd recommend Richard Rohr. And there's several others that I'd recommend, but that'd be a great place to start.
What's one thing, got to be quick here. What's one thing that you do to pursue wholeness in your body?
I try to work out. And
You try
so
to
two
work out
things.
or you do work out?
I do work out, but I don't do as much as I want. It's always that like constant, like I need to do this more, but I'm not doing this more. Like I know what is good for me. I don't do what is good for me. Like that constant juxtaposition there of just banging. Another one is consuming food.
Yeah.
So I'm a 7 and we'll
talk about the Enneagram with Irene Cho very soon.
Oh, she's a rock star.
I know. She's the only guest that is going to make a second appearance on the Global
That's
Fringe.
amazing.
But we're going to talk about the Enneagram really soon.
So in theory, I'm opening up for Irene. This is like a dream come true. This is a dream come true. A dream come. Irene, I know you're going to listen to this.
All kinds of dreams for you today.
Big fan. Like I'm excited to see you again, and it's going to be a good time. But I was going to say, as 7s, we struggle with indulgence. So it's either all in, all out. So when I'm eating well, I'm eating really well. I'm eating really clean. When I'm not, I'm like, give me every freaking thing I can have. I don't give a shit. I want it.
Yep.
And so that's the natural swing. So like, what does it look like? Well, it looks like being disciplined, and I'm going to eat well this week. I'm going to meal prep, because if I know I don't meal prep, I'm going to eat like garbage.
Right.
And so for me, it's kind of, it's hitting the problem before it even exists.
I think what you're talking about with wholeness as well comes back to being awake and being attentive. That when you're awakened,
that is good.
Let's make a social media image out of that. But when you're awake, you can go, oh, if I don't meal prep this week, then I'm just going to eat whatever's in front of me or whatever's quickest in the drive-through lane, because it's what's available. And you're attentive to like what my body actually needs right now is some greens, not a monster drink, So I think that those are two probably important pieces of wholeness to look after.
I think wholeness also means forgiving yourself when you don't meet those own criteria that are self-imposed. I think that's a big thing. You see that even James Corden just had this video in response to Bill Maher. They're both comedians. Bill Maher was talking about fat shaming. He said it needs to come back, which is crazy. And then James Corden did a rebuttal. But it was his struggle growing up being overweight. A phenomenal clip. You should watch it. But the thing that was crazy is, and what I took away was, he still is struggling and battling this wholeness in his life. And it was his inability, I think, to forgive himself for who he is. And I don't want to get emotional, but that's something he said he's going to battle the rest of his life. And he still hasn't come to grips with that. And he still feels the need to apologize for that. And so I think there's always that battle of, I want to be completely who I'm meant to be, but realize it's completely okay when I fall short of that.
That's phenomenal. I lead a coaching group, and the last thing that I do in my coaching group is talk about forgiveness. The last thing that we do in our coaching certification training is talk about forgiveness, because if we leave that undone, it's the destruction of all kinds of good things. So thank you for that.
I need to forgive me when I fall short, and I also need to forgive you when you fall short of meeting some expectations that I had of you, or vice versa. Because I think that's what this whole wholeness thing is extending grace to people and asking good questions about what does it mean to be a white male, because I have no idea what it means to be a woman, to be Black, to be an immigrant, to be in the LGBTQ culture. And the grace that I have to have grace, and I have to extend grace when we go to these places, because I'm going to F up. I'm going to say things that don't make any sense. I'm going to say things that are offensive because I don't know. And we got to give grace to people. We have to give grace to people. And that's why I hate social media, because I don't think we give grace to people.
Well, that's a pretty freaking good kickoff to talking about partnership and wholeness. What are you most excited about for us for the Global Fringe this season?
Honestly, I'm excited to be introduced to voices that I haven't been introduced to yet. That's probably my favorite thing about editing your show, is I get to have first listens, and I get to be introduced to people that I probably didn't know existed.
Yeah.
And I get to be changed.
Yeah.
Without sounding cliche.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you guys just a sneak peek right now of some of the folks that are coming on this season. I already mentioned Irene Cho is going to be on. We're going to talk about the Enneagram. My friend Chris Marlowe leads an incredible organization called Help One Now. He's going to be on early on in the season talking about how do we partner with women globally through things like micro lending and helping women start small businesses in developing countries. My dear friend Susie Gomez is going to be on. She's a pastor and a leader of justice and reconciliation stuff. She's Canadian, Korean, American, married to a Mexican, and they've got 4 kids. So her life is kind of bonkers, and she's going to come on and talk about how to like manage the tensions of multiple callings and of being in having so many different responsibilities throughout life. I'll go quicker here. Katie Cole is coming on. She wrote a book called Developing Female Leaders that has just blown up and is really deeply research-based, hearing from women. What does it look like for them to lead with wholeness? Nick Roach is a friend who used to play in the NFL, and now he is a stay-at-home dad of 4 kids. Number 5 is on the way. And we've been joking around about what the title of his podcast is going to be, but we're going to call it The Home Team and how to win at home. Because this
Very
guy,
clever,
right? I know. I wanted to call it the X's and O's of something, and he's like, it's really cheesy, April. Like, you can't go. I was like, but you played in the NFL. Like, you played X's and O's, right?
And the home team wasn't cheesy, is what you guys landed on?
That was his idea. So I thought it was brilliant. Okay, Nancy Beach is going to be on this season. And if you don't know Nancy, you need to Google her. She was one of the whistleblowers at Willow Creek Community Church with the power and sexual abuse of Bill Hybels. And so she is going to help us talk through how do we partner better together as men and women. And she has lived it so deeply, and I respect the hell out of her. My friend Mike Park is coming on. I hired Mike as a youth pastor, actually as a student integration pastor a lot of years ago at the church we worked at together, and has been one of my dearest friends ever since. And I want him to talk about like, how do we have friendship in a way that doesn't get weird? And Mike is he's truly one of my dearest friends. His 40th birthday was actually just yesterday. So
woohoo.
In podcast recording world, at least. Danielle Strickland is coming on. She's going to talk about how do we go through the stages of transition in our life. And if you don't know Danielle, she has spoken at the Global Leadership Summit at Willow Creek for a number of years and leads incredible justice movements globally. Ashley Island is going to come on and talk about how to handle transition as well. How to pursue kind of the next best thing when the time is right. Steve Carter will be on soon. And again, if you don't know Steve Carter, he was the co-lead pastor at Willow Creek when all the stuff came out about Bill Hybels. And he resigned his position because he believed women and because he knew that he needed to stand with women. And I respect the hell out of this man. His integrity is through the roof, and at great personal loss to him, was an ally for women. So yeah. Oh, and then Dr. Wes Beavis is going to come on and talk about wholeness in regards to our mental health. He wrote a book for pastors on how to not burn out. So we were going to start this season with about 8 episodes, and then I just messaged Yoder last week and I was like, I accidentally invited 4 more people. So can we make a way for us to do 12 episodes instead of 8? And you said,
I said, absolutely.
let's do it. So we're going to go every Tuesday this fall. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear all of these people and the wisdom, because God's word to them is almost always for the other, and that includes you. So Yoder, how can people follow you and Truthwork Media on the socials?
Yeah, you can go to truthworkmedia.com or at Michael Yoder 81 on Twitter.
As we know, you're not on the other ones.
Yeah, my Twitter feed is basically post-evangelical culture mixed in with political evangelical right conversations. That's where I live.
I love it. Okay, so I'm going to ask every guest 3 questions at the end of each episode. So you get to kick us off here. 60 seconds or less, like real quick.
Oh yeah, I'm good at these.
What does it look like for women to be warriors?
I would use my wife as an example.
Yep.
Someone that's not afraid to step into challenges that may not be fun and continue to fight for what they believe and fight against systems that they know to be oppressive, and to step in leadership roles even when society says you might not be ready. Just freaking do it.
Awesome. What's the number one practice that leads you towards wholeness?
I would say this, which would be conversation. Asking questions in conversation. So I did a lot of talking on this show today, which I grew up doing a lot of talking, and I have tried the shift from that to do a lot more listening and asking of good questions. And so that's when I feel most whole, is when I, like last night, when I can be around the bonfire and not be the one talking the most and just listening and asking questions to people that don't look and act and believe like me.
Yeah. All right, last one. If you could wave your magic wand, I know you have one, what would you say to men to give them courage, to encourage them toward partnership with women?
It's okay to not understand. It's okay to not agree with everything. I would say it's not okay to not listen, and it's not okay to not try. And so I would wave my magic wand and make everyone try a little harder. Because when it comes down to effort we give, I think that's one thing we do owe each other. We don't have to agree, and I don't think we're all meant to agree all the time. But if it's a lack of effort, shame on us.
All right, dude. We said we were going to go about 25, 30 minutes, and it just was too good to cut it off. So thank you.
Yeah. And I'm well aware, you're welcome. I'm well aware how I might come across on several things on saying like we need to extend grace to one another, because I know a lot of minorities and people, I know that you guys have been doing this for a very, very, very long time. So I understand that side of things. And so I want people to know I'm not discrediting that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't want that. Yeah. I don't want that to come across a way it's not meant to.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for both helping to birth the Global Fringe into being. She would not exist were it not for you. And thanks for providing the space for us to have these conversations. And I can't believe this is episode 30, season 3. It has been a ride, and I feel like we're just getting started in a lot of ways. So super glad for you to be the first white man on the Global Fringe, and excited about this conversation this season towards wholeness and partnership.
Thank you for joining the Global Fringe. Help us spread the word by rating and reviewing and sharing with your people. If you're excited about this season, become a Patreon on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Finally, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing.
Hey friends, do you love podcasts like the one you just listened to? Have you ever dreamed about having your own? Well, my name is Michael, and I work for Truthwork Media. We believe that everyone has a story, and every story deserves a podcast. Let us help you get started. Look us up at www.truthworkmedia.com, fill out our questionnaire, and I'll schedule a time to talk. It's really that easy. Truthwork Media. Everyone has a story. Yours needs a podcast.